I think grey area drinking is like, it's a place where people can be like, well, I could be this or it could be that.
Yeah.
I could have a problem or I could not have a problem. And I just think, if you're thinking maybe I have a problem, I'm going to say the answer is yes.
Yeah.
And welcome back to the Soberful podcast. I'm Veronica.
And I'm Chip.
And today we are celebrating our 5th year of this podcast. 5 years.
5 years. Who would have thought that? I wouldn't have thought that, for sure. I didn't think this was going to go beyond 5 episodes, let alone 5 years.
Oh, thanks for the confidence.
Well, no. It's just, I just thought, okay, it'll be a little thing that Veronica and I do, and that'll be all right. I didn't think, I had no idea it would still be going. It's great. That's really great. I'm very proud of it. I'm very proud to be part of it. Yeah.
Me too. So we've some interesting facts. We've had over 1,250,000 downloads over 5 years, which is
$250,000 a year.
That puts us in the top 10%, I think, of all podcasts.
Wow.
I don't know if you notice, everyone and their mother has a podcast. And
does tend to be that way, yes. Yep.
Yeah, the longevity is really... So we have downloads all the way in Cambodia, Zimbabwe, Romania, Greece, all over the world, Australia, parts of Africa, all over the Middle East, all the European countries. USA is the biggest downloads. UK is right after that. Israel, Puerto Rico, Philippines, China, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Japan, UAE. I mean, it's kind of
worldwide.
Yes, all over. Morocco. Yeah, so United States, United Kingdom, Australia, Canada, Ireland are the kind of top 5 countries. So yeah, it's a global phenomenon.
I'm not quite sure what the definition of phenomenon is, but I'm not sure it would quite hit that category. Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. I'm really proud. And we still have stuff to talk about. That's what's amazing.
Yeah. No, there's always stuff to talk about.
I'm just saying, if people listening have been listening to this for the 5 years, let us know when you see this posted. We would love to hear back from you what you think. I get lots of positive, like, we love your podcast. I tell you what I get a lot of, and I love Chip. And I just love Chip. Chip is just he's so funny. I get a lot.
It does indicate a certain level of intelligence amongst our listeners. I'm delighted to hear that. Yeah.
They love you. You are loved, Chip. You are loved.
Good. That's nice.
So to celebrate, we're doing a one-off workshop, the two of us. It's called the Sober Code, and it's going to be on May 18th. It's online, so you can join wherever you are in the world. It's a 2-hour workshop where we're going to teach you, based on our experience and wisdom. When we think together, we have... How long have you been sober? Is it 30?
38 years.
38. Oh, God. So we have 61 years of sobriety between us. We are going to talk about the 4 key things every sober person needs to know. If you want to join us, it's going to be recorded. I think it's $97. You can sign up at soberful.com, or you'll see it if you're on our mailing list, or you'll see it on social media. It's the only workshop the two of us are going to do together this year. So please come and join us and hang out and you can ask questions and all of that kind of stuff. And we'll have a jolly time for 2 hours. So that's that. What we normally do when we have a celebration is we do Ask Us Anything. And all of these are to do with sobriety, which is fine.
Yeah.
Shall I kick off?
Go for it.
This one is from Charles.
Yeah.
And he wants to know about our authentic self. The drinking is often a symptom of a deeper source of discontent. Pursuit of self can mean weighty choices. If getting sober is about becoming our true self without the interference of alcohol, how can we trust we are on the right path?
Okay.
That's a good question.
Good, very good question. If it's the Charles I think it is, I would expect nothing less.
It is. It is. I know it is.
Well, absolutely correct that drinking is often a symptom of a deeper source of discontent. I have never known anybody I've ever dealt with in 38 years who, once the alcohol is removed, is revealed as a perfectly content, well put together individual. They're always revealed as, a bit in need of help and need of a bit of a service every now and then, and sort of need a bit of support with things. And a lot of stuff does get revealed. I think, in answer to so I totally agree with the first bit about that it does reveal we all come into recovery with a sort of degree of discontent. I think that's we might be really happy about being sober, and there are some good benefits that come very quickly, health and sort of we're not behaving badly and all that sort of stuff that comes very quickly. I do think that the second bit of the question is, if getting sober is about becoming our true self without the interference of, how can we trust we're on the right path? Well, that would be, I think, assuming that we knew we could see into the future. And I think sometimes we have to take a risk of, weigh up the kind of pros and cons, but we have to sometimes take a risk and be prepared to say, okay, that was a mistake. I need to come back from that. And I mean, certainly I can think of career choices I've made, sounded very attractive, sounded like it was going to be good, looked good, but within a very short space of time of kind of going down that path, I found that it was not for me at all, and I had made the wrong decision and had to come back again and say no. And so, but I thought at the beginning, I thought I'd done enough. Yeah. I thought and I mean, I know that Charles is talking about things a little bit more sort of emotional and internal than going for a job. But I do think the same, we have to, I'm very big, I often post that poem about a time to risk. If we don't take risks, we will never grow. And risking means sometimes we get hurt, sometimes we fail, sometimes we don't get the results we want. But if we don't risk, if we stay secluded in our little world without interacting with too many people and keeping it all incredibly safe, we won't grow. And I think the ability to risk and to try going down an avenue, going down a path, that's what you should do. And it's okay to sort of start something and then go, do you know what? I don't think this is for me. It might be a relationship. It might be a job. It might be a hobby. It might be a friendship. All sorts of things where we could think that this is something that we need to do or could do, and it looks okay, and we've investigated as far as we can do. We've met some people. But for us, we suddenly find that, no, it doesn't gel with us. And I've taken the risk, but I've learned from that lesson, and I'm going to maybe admit failure or admit I don't like it and have to go back a bit. And I think that's fine. I don't think there is any kind of guarantees in anything. Certainly I know in relationships, and, did I with regards to becoming a father at my age in recovery, I thought that was, I was quite reluctant to do that. And it's been the most wonderful experience of my life. And I couldn't have asked for anything better, so I didn't, and I think I've become a good father. And one of the reasons I didn't want to do that was because I thought I have been a bad father. How can I ever be a good father? So I took the risk, and it's paid off really well. And I think, to me, this is about being prepared to take risks sometimes.
Yeah, so I want to add to that in that I think you're right. I think it's being prepared to take risks, but also being prepared to make mistakes. I think that we still have this quite ingrained belief that making a mistake is the worst thing ever.
Yeah.
And in fact, the human experience and the human experience of growth is actually all about making mistakes. That's just the process. So I think that I think we have to be on the square that we're on, right? It's like, this feels right where I am right now. And then this is the next square. And then we keep going. And sometimes we're like, okay, no, this isn't for me or whatever. Yeah. So I think we have to develop discernment. And I think we can, and it's wisdom and maturity, isn't it? It's, I feel like the older I get, there's definitely mistakes that I have learnt from, and I'm a bit more like, no. I think sometimes it's hard to tell, and we have to take risks, and we have to be discerning, and we just have to kind of trust the process that this feels right now, this feels right, and I'll go to
Yep.
the next square, and if that feels right, I'll keep going. But I'll also be aware that when it doesn't feel right, and I think the other question was about trusting our feelings, because I
Yeah.
know that back in the day, I used to make decisions based on my feelings, and they were nearly always the wrong ones.
Yep.
So I think when we are doing work on ourselves that's around self-awareness, I think we have a much better chance of knowing ourselves better
Yep.
and making better decisions. So
Yeah.
I still make wrong and bad decisions today, but I think I do them less frequently because I'm able to do that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree completely. And I think there are things that I have tried or been suggested that would kind of really improve my emotional state, a certain type of meditation or a certain type of kind of inner work. And I've had a go at it, and I found that it didn't fit for me. And I've gone, okay, no, nice, interesting.
Yeah.
Looks like it works for lots of people. Don't think that's going to work for me. And I'm glad, glad I've done it, glad I've tried it out. But I mean, I'm thinking, relationships, jobs. God, I mean, two jobs I can think of in particular. I thought, oh no, this is just the right path for me. This is exactly where I want to be. This is going to be play to my strengths, etc., etc. And found in one case very, very quickly, oh my goodness me, I don't want to be here at all. And have to be able to say no, sorry, not for me, and pull away and admit I made the wrong choice there. Why did I make the wrong choice? Bit of ego came into it for sure. I think that was probably the big mistake I made. I think it stroked my ego, and I allowed my ego to be stroked. And recognizing that was a good lesson to learn. But I think, yeah, to me, it's about, as you say, taking risks and being prepared to make mistakes. It's not the end of the world. And none of us are perfect, and none of us have got to this stage without making quite a few mistakes, actually. Yeah.
Yes. So I think that all of us are kind of it's a balancing act of feeling what is authentic for us and what isn't. I feel like when I've made, like, I guess, like your life partner and things like that.
Yeah.
I mean, I felt that like 100% certainty about that. And like my work, like there's nothing else I want to do. Like this is just it. And yeah. So I think that as we become more self-aware and we have a program and we mature and the more sober we get, I think we can trust ourselves more and more and more.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, let's go to the next question. Catherine, how to manage your emotions in early sobriety? I'm only 6 weeks, but I feel more volatile emotionally. I've tried journaling. That's what's upsetting me, but I continue to stew and to overthink. It's only when I get it off my chest by talking to the person concerned that I feel the emotional pressure lift. But it's not always the best option for me to do that. And I'm left feeling drained and riddled with guilt. How can I diffuse these emotions without causing myself further distress? I want to say that's really normal when people get sober. It's like taking the lid off, right? You've got all these emotions that have been suppressed for so long in a storage container that getting sober, it often takes that lid off. I mean, I felt like that, and I see all my clients go through this. It's just all of these emotions come out sideways and all over the place, right?
Yeah. I mean, I was going to say, welcome to the world of early sobriety, Catherine. It's like I can remember being delighted that I got sober and clean, and but my God, the emotions, it would like, I'd wake up in the morning, I'd feel okay, I'd have a conversation with somebody, I wouldn't feel okay, so I'd feel down again, and then I'd get a look from somebody, I'd feel even worse, and somebody would say something funny, and it was like, oh my God, can all this just slow down a bit, please? Because I feel like I'm on an emotional roller coaster here, and it's like, just give me some stability. At least when I was drunk and stoned, I had some stability. Now I'm up and down all over the place, and I don't know what I'm going to be thinking from 1 minute to the next, and I think that takes quite a long time to settle down. And she says she's 6 weeks in. And I think she's experiencing what many people feel. I think the bit there that I would just caution a little bit of patience with is she's talking about it's only when I get off my chest by talking to person concerned I feel emotional pressure lift. I think there are definitely times when obviously that's the best thing to do, but I would caution a degree of caution there. I mean, I would nothing more in the world like to have said to my mother, I think you were a really bad mother, and I really resent the fact that you did this, and this. But I was not ready for that at 6 weeks. I needed to get a lot more of my stuff together. I had to be prepared for the consequences of that, getting it off my chest. Yes, I got it off my chest, but did it leave me feeling incredibly vulnerable? Did I have the support system in place to deal with the backlash that I would have got? Was it the right thing to do? Would it have been better, as she says, to journal it and be happy with just journaling it or talking to some friends about it, which I did do, and I found that gave me some release. I don't think it's always, personally, I don't think it's always necessary to deal with everything face to face, because I think there are certain situations where you can do that if the person who you are talking to is prepared to play the same game as you at the same level as you. And my mother was not, she would have shut me down, she would have shamed me, she would have made me feel absolutely awful for kind of getting my truth off my chest. So I think you have to be careful that whilst you may think I think you can land yourself into in a lot of trouble if you don't make sure that you're going to get the right response or going to get heard by the person you want to get the stuff off your chest with. My mother would not have heard that. She would have told me I was stupid. She'd have, she wouldn't have heard it.
Yeah.
But, I could deal with it in therapy. I could deal with it with my friends. I could listen to other people who had other difficulties with their mothers. And I think I would just caution a little bit of patience there, and also really, really checking that you've got your strength and support system in place to deal with any backlash, I suppose, if it goes emotionally wrong for you.
Yeah, and also, I mean, we are so overly sensitive, aren't we?
Yeah.
And we take
Yeah.
everything personally.
Yeah.
So it's not always the wisest course of action is to keep taking our emotions to other people for them to try and help us feel better. So I know, so there's lots of things you can do in early sobriety. I mean, this is why a support group is really helpful, to just have people who understand exactly what you're going through and are a bit further along. I personally love EFT and tapping. I think that's a really, really good way to emotionally regulate yourself in the moment. I teach that in a lot of my programs. I think, things like just taking a walk, taking a time out. I think connection is one of the biggest answers. Being able to reach out to someone by text or call someone and go, I can remember so many times in early sobriety where I thought X, and then I spoke to a couple of people and was like, actually, oh, it's Z.
Yeah.
Okay, I see it differently now, because I was all of a rage and all over the place. Just, take it one day at a time. It will get better. It will settle down. And this is one of the key teachings that Chip and I have, is it's not about the alcohol. It's really about the emotional regulation and dealing with our feelings and why we feel that way.
Yeah.
That takes a little bit of time. So working with somebody who's qualified in some way to help you with that, it's really one of the most effective ways that you can do that. I mean, there is lots of self-help groups that are free that have programs that, if money is an issue.
Yeah, I was going to say, actually, I was going to say exactly the same. I was going to say, I would suggest, obviously, therapy would be a huge place to get these emotions off your chest. Not everybody can afford that, but there are forums. We provide one. Other places provide forums where you can interact with other people, for no cost. And there are things that are available where you can get support and help. But obviously, trying to find therapy would be good, I think, but that may not always be possible. But certainly talking to people, I think, is huge.
Yeah. I think the thing to recognize is that we've outsourced managing our emotional lives to alcohol. So when we don't have alcohol, I have this really important thing that I never learn any skills to deal with. So that is the work. And you will get there. So do what you need to do to get through the day. Absolutely get support from a group, because that will help the most at the beginning, and then go from there.
Yeah, I'm just looking at a phrase, just because I've got the question in front of me, and the phrase riddled with guilt
Right.
really stands out with me. And I think,
Yeah.
I think there are things, certainly, for instance, about the way I brought up my daughter, absolutely riddled with guilt about that. It was right for me to be guilty, but not to the extent whereby I kind of overcompensated or didn't do the right thing. And I think it's important to make sure that you really take time to process that stuff before you kind of go overcompensating to diminish the sense of guilt. And I think well, yeah, I just think talking to people in recovery who've probably gone through exactly the same thing is going to be a good way of trying to diminish that.
Yeah. Riddled with guilt. That will go.
Yeah.
Okay, Emma, how to give something back in the UK. And I think this applies in the USA as well. It appears there are lots of ways to contribute to recovery groups, movements, and services in the US. Treatment and support for addiction is very limited in the UK unless you have money, as most of the pre-existing services have been stripped back owing to lots of budget cuts over the years in this area. Apart from being of service through 12-step programs, how can you be of service in your local community in the UK to those struggling with addiction, especially in early recovery? Can you volunteer? I feel some of the services offered are lacking in understanding around the point, not why the addiction, why the pain. I have met fellows who are being hindered in gaining access to rehab treatment centres because of lack of understanding around mental health, trauma, and addiction. I'm just going to sit back and let you take that.
Okay. Well, she is absolutely right in everything she says. She's absolutely right that it is incredibly difficult to get, unless you've got money, you're not going to get a rehab program. Very, very difficult indeed, probably with a huge waiting list. And you might, if you're very lucky, get something from your local authority, but extremely unlikely. So she's absolutely right. And the stripping back of the local services, which is going to get even worse in the next few years, it's going to get stripped back even further, does mean that when you go to your local service, you are going to be, as she said, met by people there who are inexperienced, who have a different agenda perhaps, who will do anything in their powers to kind of just tick a box and justify their existence and not really kind of look at the underlying things. They'll look at the keep a drink diary or change your drug use or this or that, but not look at the underlying stuff or provide support groups that would be helpful for that. So I think she's absolutely right there that there is very difficult to get into a proper detox and rehab. Almost impossible unless you've got money, and it really annoys me. Seeing as I used to run a program, as you well know, that was extremely reasonable and extremely accessible financially and in access. Local services.
And we never turned anyone. We never turned anyone away who needed it. We never turned anyone away.
No.
Yeah, and it was very reasonably priced.
Yeah, it was, and yes, local services are going to get even worse. However, are there things that you can do? Yes, there are a lot of very good local rehabilitation or support groups that can be helped. And I, as somebody who ran a local charity, really, I mean, it became national, but it was a local area. You can put money into huge charitable organizations in the UK, and that money will get, if you put £20 or £100 into the rehab I ran, that would fund somebody through their rehab for about 2 days, probably. If you put £100 into a huge charitable organization, probably about 10p will get down to somebody on the ground. However, I think that a lot of things, if you're in recovery and you're secure in your recovery and you know what you're talking about, go to the people who make decisions. Go to your doctor and tell them that you've stopped drinking and this is how you did it. tell them about your experience. Tell them about the services that you've gone and why it didn't work. Educate the people who are going to make some of these decisions. And often when we go to doctors, we don't talk about what we've done. And I think they need to, of all people, doctors. So that would be a way that you could help your local community. You could go to your local doctor surgery and have an appointment with a doctor. And if maybe even say, can I do a talk to your surgery people? But that's one way you could think. I speak in schools. I speak in schools quite a lot, and that's another way you can sort of get the message across: where to get help, how to get help, when to get help. There are lots of places where you can volunteer. That places that are crying out for rehabs. I know two right now that are crying out. One in East London and one in Central London, that are crying out for volunteers to help just be around and be a sort of responsible adult. Not necessarily needing massive qualifications, but just needing support and help. And I'm quite happy to give Emma some support in looking for the right place for where she could do that. But there are definitely a lot of struggling places, provide a small service, but my God, they would love to have somebody come in and answer the telephone. Yeah, so I think there are places, and if Emma wanted to get in touch with me, or anybody wants to get in touch with me, where can I provide help? I would certainly give them that, but I would say, don't be frightened to talk to your doctor, your dentist, anybody who has any kind of interaction with people. Tell them what you've done, and tell them how you did it and what worked for you. And that way, people who make professional decisions will be that little bit more educated, because I can assure you, doctors, dentists, psychiatrists do not get any kind of training at all during their training about alcohol and drug misuse. So it unfortunately falls on people like us to try and do that.
It's still amazing to me. I mean, America is very different. And the difference between the two countries, I think, is England is very focused on harm minimization.
Yep.
And which has its place and is appropriate for some people.
Yep.
But nevertheless views abstinence as something like, that's really whereas America is completely focused on abstinence and 12 steps. Absolutely. And needs some more harm minimization, because that's actually much more appropriate with the opioid crisis that's happening.
I mean, you talk in America about going to meetings and everybody knows what you're talking about. Talk that in the UK.
Yeah.
The lobbying has been against 12-step program by people who work in the local services is quite extraordinary.
Yeah. I worked with tons of local services with people who were practitioners who were helping people with alcohol and drug problems. And I want to say plenty of them abused and misused substances. It was really hypocritical. Yeah. Anyway, that's a whole...
Yeah.
I felt back when I was working like 20 years ago in the UK, like we didn't have enough services. But I look back now and think, God, we had so much. You know, I could get people into a private pay treatment centre. I mean, everybody who wanted to get into treatment, I think I was able to get into treatment. And I know it's not the case now. I just know that's completely impossible.
Now. Yep. I think it is practically impossible. Although, of course, people will say,
unless you can pay.
Unless you can pay, yeah. You're not going to, waiting a year to go into somewhere is a long, long time.
Yeah, that's pointless. When people need to go into treatment, they need to go in within 24 hours.
Yeah, the UK medical care in general is an absolute disaster.
Yeah.
But I can assure you the bottom of the pile are mental health, substance misuse, eating disorders, things like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Horrible.
Okay, so here's an interesting question from Lisa. Mm-hmm. It's very simple. How to ignite authentic sexual passion in sobriety?
Well, I found it very difficult, authentic sexual. I mean, I found sex in early recovery a bloody nightmare, to be honest.
It's terrifying.
Oh, my God. It was like, hold on a minute, you want me to take my clothes off sober? Are you kidding? Yeah.
Oh, my God.
I mean, it was just because when I was using and drinking, it was like, okay, the possibility I might have sex is on the cards. Right, first thing we've got to do is get the drugs and get drunk. Then we'll go to stage 2. And so, I mean, it was just a nightmare. It was horrible. And I think, I don't, I think it obviously got better and got to a much more enjoyable situation. But I mean, I suppose as a man, there's just stereotypically, it's, I think men can have inauthentic sexual passion very easily and without giving it much thought. So I think the idea of what I would call intimacy, where you've got a kind of meeting of minds and a meeting of bodies, and to a kind of joint sexual endeavor, that I think does take a bit of time. Certainly for me, it did, to try to learn about intimacy, and to learn about kind of an exchange of views and needs and wants and things like that. And I think, I think there's no doubt about it that as a man, I behaved in a particularly male way when I was drinking and using, and it wasn't about authenticity. It was about sexual gratification. And I think that as I became, sober and kind of realized that, people have feelings, people want different things, it's a whole different endeavor. So not only did I have to get over my kind of the difficulty I actually had of being with somebody in the same room, just naked in front of somebody, was just horrific. Once that had worn off, then I started to learn, I think, but I don't think I got it straight away. In fact, I'm sure I didn't get it straight away. Now I think I hope I'm able to have authentic sexual conversations. Probably a lot more conversations now take place at my age than actual activity. But I think I've got there. But I think it took me a lot longer than I'd hoped.
Yeah, I found it completely terrifying, and it took a while. I just want to say, I mean, sober sex is so much better.
Yeah.
But right. I mean, it was just, yes, there's just.
I think that was something that I thought, because, there's no doubt about it. When I was, especially on stimulants like cocaine and amphetamines and drink and everything, I would have wild and wacky sex, and I think that was, could never be replicated sober. And, that was the only way. And I've learned that you can enjoy all kinds of activities sober, but you have to get over the self-consciousness first. You have to get over that. I think early sobriety sexual encounters are usually filled with self-consciousness, self-obsession and difficulty. But I think once you get over that, it's quite possible, certainly in my experience, my sexual activity in recovery has been so much better than when I was under the influence of drugs. Yeah. Much more authentic, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's, kind of back to the first question. It's about self-discovery and trusting yourself and being in a process and being honest with yourself. And I think that, sex is so much better when you're sober, but allow yourself some time and space to discover that.
Yes.
So last question, because I want to discuss this because I find this comes up and it's interesting. So I would love to hear their take. I don't know who this is from. I don't have a name. I would love to hear their take on grey area drinking. This is how I define myself. I have never struggled with hangovers or binge drinking, but I was a regular drinker of wine for years. And now my body simply does not want to digest it. Grey area drinking and the impact on health over the years would be a great topic for me. I sometimes find it hard to relate to those who drink in high quantities to get drunk. Never me. So even participating in a group feels hard. Not sure I belong because my struggle feels minimal to most. So you've heard the term grey area drinking, right?
Yeah, I mean, it has different. I've heard it being sort of sober curious. I've heard all kinds of ways of describing that sort of middle ground of, don't really feel certainly I've heard it in support groups. I don't really feel I've been as bad as that person, or as So do I
Yeah.
need to do it? I mean,
So this person's saying that they I so this is my thing with grey area drinking. It's like I don't think there is any. I don't believe there is grey area drinking, right?
well,
The only people who have a problem, the people who don't have a problem with alcohol, don't think about it. Like there just
yeah,
doesn't.
that's
So
right.
I understand there is degrees, right? I felt like that when I got sober because I was never a daily drinker. I would not drink every day of the week. I drank first thing in the morning, maybe on 4 occasions ever.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely got drunk. I definitely was a binge drinker. But I felt like that when I first went to 12-step program. I listened to everyone else's story and was like, oh God, I'm not that bad. Like I didn't and I questioned it like, oh, and I think a lot of people do that. And this person is saying they don't even binge drink or get hungover or anything, but clearly their alcohol consumption is troubling them. So I just think it's black and white. I think that my husband has maybe 2 drinks a month. It would never occur to him to do dry January or to think, am I grey? It just doesn't ever think about it. He thinks about it the same way I think about having a strawberry, or just have a strawberry. And I don't know. So I think if you're thinking about it, there's a problem.
I would say that as well. Yeah, I would say that as well. I mean, first of all, I think we need to acknowledge that there is not one single health benefit from drinking alcohol.
Yes, not one.
Not one. But I do think you're right. I think if the person is concerned or somehow, I mean, she kind of, or they, I don't know who it is. So somehow her body or their body is rejecting alcohol or not reacting quite the way that they wanted. That seems to me indicative of the fact that probably it would be a good idea to give yourself a break. And I think we can always find somebody who didn't drink who drank more than we did. And who, in fact, most of us have found somebody who drank worse than we did in order to justify our drinking. And it makes our drinking look, okay, well, I'm not as bad as that person down there. I'm not. That happens a lot. I hope I've never been judgmental of somebody who comes to a support group, for instance, who says, I'm not been as bad as everybody else. It seems to have caught it early, but I really would like to have some support. And I hope I've never gone, oh well, you didn't stick heroin in your jugular vein, so don't belong here. I think. And I don't like that attitude, actually. I don't like that. There's no doubt about it. There is this kind of perverse competitiveness about how bad did you get and all that sort of stuff, which I think does put off people from coming at an earlier stage in their drinking career. I think, in fact, actually, now that I think about the question, when I think about quite a lot of clients I've got, they've got a problem with alcohol, but they've still got jobs, they've still got homes, they've still got wives, but they want to stop drinking. But one of the things that puts them off going to support groups is that they're sort of so many horror stories of, deprivation and despair, and it puts them off going and getting support and help. And I think, you said it earlier on, if you think you've got a problem with alcohol, it's probably a good chance you've got a problem with alcohol. And frankly, if anybody gives you a hard time because, oh, what are you doing here? You didn't go to prison or whatever it is, tell them to sod off. And because I know this isn't about. For instance, I know that one support group says the only requirement for membership is the desire to stop drinking. It doesn't say anything about you must have done this and you must have done that. It just says, do you want to stop drinking? That's all.
Yeah.
And she sounds like she does. And fair play to her. I don't know why I think she's a she, but she may not be. They may not be.
Yeah. I think grey area drinking is like, it's a place where people can be like, well, I could be this or it could be that.
Yeah.
I could have a problem or I could not have a problem. And I just think people who don't have a problem, they just don't if you're thinking maybe I have a problem, I'm going to say the answer is yes.
Yeah.
Because no, you don't, right? I don't think like, oh God, do I have a problem with strawberries? I have 3 strawberries a week. Blimey, like, is that too many? Like, oh, I just, So I think
it's not going to do any harm not drinking.
Yes. Yeah. And here's the thing. Just because on the outside your drinking does not look like other people's or as many people's, I was going to say I have lots of clients actually like this.
Mm-hmm.
On the inside, how you feel about yourself actually may be more similar than you realize.
Yeah.
So it's not the outside manifestation of the drinking. It's look for how you feel on the inside and see if you have any identification. Do you have feelings of fear or self-loathing or shame or guilt? Do you sometimes feel like you're not good enough? Do you and does it your wine habit pleasantly just numb those feelings away so you don't have to think about them or deal with them? So it's have a look at how people feel on the inside, not what's going on the outside, is what I would say about that. Okay, well, that's it for today. Thank you so much. Thank you for being with us for 5 years. If you have a second, please give us a rating on whatever app you listen to your podcast on. That would be really helpful to us. And if you'd like to come to our workshop, the Sober Code, that takes place on May 18th, 2023, go to soberful.com, check out my social media, and you will be able to find a link to sign up. It's a fun little thing that Chip and I are doing. We would love to hang out with you for a couple of hours and take you through the 4 key things that every sober person needs to know. Anyway, congratulations on sticking with me for 5 years, Chip.
I've got an important question. Where do you read these comments that say, we love Chip and we want to hear more about you? Where do you read those comments?
Oh, okay. So if you go to so often it's on calls with people when they do a call with me.
Oh,
often people have listened to the podcast. But if you go to the podcast app on Apple, there is more I don't think I've ever seen anything about, oh, I love Veronica. I love her. She's so amazing.
Well, maybe there's a lesson. Maybe there's a lesson there.
It's all like everybody wants to adopt you or something.
Well,
so if you scroll down to the bottom,
I'm up for adoption.
Wow, this is the latest one. Wow, you guys are amazing. I'm a recovery coach and have shared your podcast with so many of my clients. Thank you. If you go through there, which I know you'll now be doing for the next 2 hours.
I'm doing it. Yeah.
Right.
I'm doing it.
You will see a bunch of Chip and Veronica are great together and give real solutions. Keep it up. Please keep at this. The sexual abuse episode is perfect example of the exceptional work of Chip and Veronica. Okay, well, there's a lot there, but there's more. I have definitely seen some like, oh my God, I love Chip.
Okay,
blah, 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 blah.
I'm going to be on it later on. Don't worry.
But people say it on calls. People say it like you don't pay attention on social media and things, but I get it a lot. I'm like, yes, I'll pass that on.
Okay. Thank you. All right, that important question has been dealt with. Thank you very much.
Thank you for staying with us for 5 years. Thank you, Chip, for sticking with me for 5 years. And we will be back next week.
Thank you. Bye-bye.